One of the hardest things to deal with as a spring gardener here in Central Virginia is the wild and woolly way that our temperatures can swing. We have had actually a real winter for once. We haven't had a real winter in a long time, meaning that it got very cold for a while and we had lots of snow, and that was all good. And we had a very typical moving from winter into spring in the late February, early March time, meaning we had a gradual increase of temperatures, sort of like the good old days, which was really nice. We have had here in the last couple of weeks some spikes of temperature, which are somewhat problematic because when temperatures get up to in the 70s and 80s, some of your cold crops and things like bok choy will just go to flower. So I'm actually chopping down some of my Chinese cabbage today because it is starting to bolt. It's starting to get little flower buds. So I'm going to make a lovely stir fry with some of that today. So frost protection is really, really challenging, but it's not impossible. And there are a couple of tips. I'm out here today after the day before yesterday. We had very, very, very warm temperatures. Yesterday we had loads and loads of rain, which was fabulous. And today it is cooler. So that rain was bringing in a cool front. And in fact, tonight it's actually going to dip down to cold. They're saying 29 degrees here, but it might go as low as 25. Now, things like broccoli and things like that, kale, they're going to survive most likely, particularly my plants that are larger. But my plants that are smaller, well, they might get hit, and I want to make sure that I can protect them. Things like radishes, I don't worry about. Things like spinach, I don't worry about. Lettuce can take a frost and a freeze. It can actually, it's kind of interesting because it'll freeze literally the leaves and then it's fine after the sun comes out and warms it up. So I'm not terribly worried about a lot of the things in my garden. What I do worry about are things that are very, very small, just starting out, because if they're just starting out, like my kale, I have a few kale plants that I transplanted really tiny, just to kind of get them off of my shelf and get them into the ground. They're kind of like afterthoughts. So I'm going to go ahead and cover those up. I'm very worried about my blueberries because my blueberry plants, some of them have started to flower, and I've actually got some berry formation on a few of the blossoms. So this is a very vulnerable time for blueberries that are budding out right now. It's also a vulnerable time for any kind of fruit that is in flower and is starting at this point. But I don't think I can protect all of mine. So I'll show you a few of the techniques that I'm going to use and some of the tools. I would recommend that if you know frost is on its way, if you can get out in the warmth of the mid-afternoon, it's now about 3:30 here, and I know frost is going to get here somewhere around 2 a.m. and it's going to freeze the freeze warning is from 2 a.m. until 9 a.m. So that's a good long time. That's long enough to do some damage, some serious damage to your plants. So I'm going to do a few things. I'm going to take hay and I'm going to cover up my potatoes, which have sprouted. I planted potatoes back on the 14th of March and 15th of March. They are sprouting already, and I want to make sure that I cover up those leaves. The potatoes themselves will survive, but any foliage that's up above needs to be protected against frost. The potato will send new growth up. But I don't want to lose what we've got already, so I'm going to go ahead and just put a really thick layer of hay anywhere I see potatoes sprouting, and that will protect them just fine. Then tomorrow morning, after the freeze is over, I'll remove that hay so that they can get the rays of the sun that they need. I have a couple of tools at my disposal. I'll grab anything that I think can really cover stuff up. I have these big glass vases that are quite heavy. The wind will not knock these over. So I'm going to put those over some of my smaller seedlings. You can use empty planters like this, and they do have holes in the bottom. So what I normally do is just put a plastic bag over the top of this, and then I'll weight it all down with a rock. So if it gets windy tonight, these won't blow away. So that's a good solution. And earlier in the season, I did a thing about frost cover, and this is, or fleece, garden fleece, and that's exactly what this is. This is a huge piece, and I will be covering up my blueberries with this because I really want those blueberries. Last year they got hit by frost and I didn't have as many blueberries as I would like. I also have a lighter weight garden fleece. This will provide maybe as much as 2-3 maybe even 4 degrees of protection. And the cool thing about this is you can put it directly over your plants. I'm actually going to put this, I'm going to remove my, you can see behind me I've got some covers on my brassica bed. This is actually my spinach bed, but it has cabbage in there. And so I'm going to take, I'm not worried about my spinach, but I am a little bit worried if it gets down to 25 and stays that way for like 4 or 5 hours about my cabbage. So I'm just going to lay this directly on the cabbage plants themselves. And it will, while the sun is still up, it'll capture the warmth and it will help protect those plants. So I'm going to go ahead and do all these things, and I'll show you as I go how it turns out. Just do what you can to protect what you can. It's always a good idea also to have some backup plants for this very reason. So you've got a nice fleece over the blueberries, the ones that are blooming right now, my older ones. Then I have some netting, insect netting, double layered, and then covered with a tarp. I'm trying to keep the tarp from touching the blueberries directly. And then over down here with some of the new ones, just the ones that were in bloom, I went ahead and just put a double layer of insect netting over, and I sort of built a little cage and draped a sheet over it so that those are not resting directly on the blueberries. And well, it took about an hour with a little break in there to go with my brother-in-law to get another cattle panel for my hops that I transplanted. That's another video I'll do. But I think everything's buttoned down now, and hopefully we'll find that everything survived the frost just fine. It all depends on how long it stays cold and how cold it gets. I'm pretty confident that if it goes to like 28 degrees, 27, these things would be okay. So thank you so much for watching. Take care. Bye. Hey, you just missed the covering up of the garden. And I went and got a cattle panel.